All right, welcome everybody. It is Dave Cooper, and we are live coming to you from Lake Nona, outside of Orlando, Florida, with Tavistock, and we are here with NAHB Student Chapter. We're going to be filming today and tomorrow. We will be live at 1 p.m. Showcasing all the wonderful things and technology that Lake Nona has. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Anyhow, today is going to be a lot of fun as well. On today's product spotlight, we are going to be talking about pop-up CLT plants. Maybe they're not called pop-up, but it's sure a great term for them, because we're going to talk about how you can do CLT plants in rural areas to serve the communities better and to build better, to build healthier, to build stronger, and to build safer. So with that said, my name is Dave Cooper. Please hit that like and share button right now. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And we go to Twitch because that's where the young people are. And if they're not going to come to us, by golly, we're going to go to them. All right, everybody, at davecooper.live, we are bringing you the people and the processes that are building it better. Our guests and topics include experts in building systems, to building science, to building codes, and the tech used to build it better. We are always seeking out the best and the brightest in construction and discovering all the innovative ways that buildings come to life. And we have two sponsors that we need to thank today: Forward Solutions Group, Ben Hershey and Joe Butler. They are a team with more than 175 years of experience developing and specifying manufacturing for panelized, volumetric, modular industries with best practices in development and implementation. They offer consulting with investors, developers, manufacturers, builders, and using offsite manufacturing methods. Forward Solutions is driving companies to succeed where others have failed. For more information, please reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. And our newest sponsor is Howick. I love it. Howick is a pioneer in technology of precision light steel roll forming machines. For over 40 years, their commitment to innovation in cold form steel, also known as light gauge steel, precision manufacturing, uncompromising quality, and exemplary customer service have defined Howick's way. Their commitment underpins the competitive advantage enjoyed by their customers. To learn more, visit their website, howickltd.com. All right, enough of all that. Thank you to our sponsors, both awesome companies and people to work with. So thank you. But now let's get on to the show. We are going to bring in Andy Hawk. Let's bring him in. What is up, Andy Hawk, Timber Ridge? How are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you for joining us today. I have to tell you, man, this is such an exciting week. Meeting you was an exciting opportunity, and having this conversation and being able to have you on the show. We're always looking to talk about innovative ways that we can help the affordable housing crisis, that we can build better, that we can help smaller communities, in your case, rural communities, really have top quality construction. And I think this is an amazing, using local resources, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So Andrew, like I ask everybody, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital. We will call your mother, and it is a fact. We have done it before. So go ahead. You got about 2 or 3 minutes.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for having Timber Age on. We're so excited. So just as background, my business partner, Kyle Hansen, and I are both Montana kids. And ended up down in the Four Corners area. Our facility is in Durango, Colorado, right in the southwest corner of Colorado. And I came down this way originally in the early 90s to go to school at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, and just fell in love with Durango and thought, well, if I ever get the opportunity, that's a place I'd love to take my family. And so we had that opportunity and have been here in Durango since 2008. And for Timber Age, man, given the creation story there, it started originally in about 2016 with an article that NPR had done on mass timber, but specifically cross-laminated timber. And at that point, Kyle had been having conversations with our local Forest Service office. He was running a wood products manufacturing facility in a smaller town near here, Mancos, Colorado. And they just kept saying to Kyle, man, if you can find something to do with Ponderosa Pine, that would be ideal, because it's a resource that's super abundant here, and we're just not sure what to do with it all. And so by 2018, Kyle and I had sat down together and put together a wood innovation grant application, and made that application to the Forest Service. And we were really lucky to be awarded that grant in 2018 in May. And it was specific to experimenting with Ponderosa pine and the creation of cross-laminated timber. And we said, look, we'll figure out a way to make at least one panel out of Ponderosa pine and incorporate it into a building here locally. And spent 2018 and 2019 really prototyping and proving up a lot of business ideas and figuring out, well, can you use Ponderosa pine? Where will we get Ponderosa pine? What does the supply chain look like? And by 2020, it was quite clear that with the community's input, after a number of community meetings that we hosted and talking to a huge number of folks, that there was some momentum behind it, that people were hearing about mass timber and CLT and ways to build better. And 2020, we went through 2 different business accelerator programs, and Timber Age really started to move. And just recently, we put together the first CLT and timber frame structure in Southwest Colorado, and we're almost certain the first Ponderosa Pine CLT structure in the entire state. So that's kind of our background and cultural history there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So why Ponderosa pine? Give us the reason behind the Ponderosa pine. I think that'll kind of set up the stage for everything else.
Yeah, it's a fascinating tree species. It was heavily utilized in Western construction, going back to the 1800s up and down the Rocky Mountains and where Ponderosa grows naturally. And a lot of that material was utilized in our buildings all through the late 1800s, early part of the 1900s. And it was a lot of old growth material. A lot of it was sort of logged out and utilized, and then it kind of fell out of favor. And it's now become a tree that is abundant throughout the Rockies and throughout the Western states. A lot of communities are seeing it as a resource again, even though it's slower growing than a lot of the other species around the state. Right. But it represents a totally viable and sound building material. And we're like, well, maybe it doesn't make the greatest 2x4 or 2x6, but you know what? It might make good CLT.
Yeah, and it does.
It does. And, we're just now beginning a lot of structural testing and stuff with our local college here, but we've made, I don't think we're over 100 panels at this point, and we manufacture smaller panels, but it's quite a few dozen at this point, and it does produce some really high quality panels. And even the Ponderosa pine that's been infected by bark beetle, still, so long as it is structurally sound, produces great material.
So you can reuse the lumber or use the trees that are going to maybe die because of the beetle to begin with. So you're repurposing that lumber before it actually goes bad.
Correct. Yeah. One of the things we talked with the Forest Service about is whether it's being wiped out by wildfire or by insect infestation. Right. If we can get our hands on that material, even after the trees have been infected or even shortly after they have perished, it's still structurally sound, and it meets requirements around specific gravity and density. And, it gives us an opportunity to go in and work with communities on forest health and improve some of their fire resiliency and still produce a really high quality wood product.
I love it. I love it. So listen, everybody, if you are just joining us, as you can see on the screen, we got Andrew Hawk, co-founder Timber Age Systems on. Not only are we going to talk about this and talk about how their idea is spawning to serve local rural communities, but also expand to other rural communities, all by using local resources. We are going to dive into some videos. Andrew was nice enough to go grab some videos of how they are doing it. So we're going to walk through all of these things. And if you're not following Andrew and you're not following Timber Age Systems and you're not subscribed to their YouTube channel, they are trying to grow.
Yes,
I highly suggest you go check it out. You follow them because they're doing amazing things. And what everybody really needs to understand understand about our show is we want innovation on this show. We want to showcase people that are thinking differently. And this is something you guys have taken to the next level on how you're doing it. You know, everything's not just about the big rural, big urban areas. I mean, there's a whole country of rural communities that also need housing, that also need your services. So let's jump into this. Where do you want to begin, Andrew?
Oh, why don't you start with that first video there with the Timber Age banner?
That one right there?
Yeah, that's perfect. Here, I'm gonna drop the audio so we can talk across it. So Kyle, who's the co-founder, is a lean systems manufacturing guru. And so you'll see some imagery that for those invested in lean manufacturing, but these are just some early kind of brainstorming sessions after we started with our Wood Innovation Grant, figuring out what exactly are we going to do here. And, that grant gave us a year's time to really think and work with our community. And, one of our mission goals is to elevate communities. And so we brought in folks from all around the Durango area, lots of different expertise that started to speak into Timber Age. And then by 2020 here, you'll start to see it. Whether it was going out and meeting with landowners, or got a little drone footage here of us actually working out in the forest with a local landowner that wanted to improve the fire resiliency on his property and then begin to utilize material here. We use an old 1987 Wood-Mizer LT40 that we worked with Wood-Mizer to get our hands on. It actually came all the way out to us from Maine. But we parked the mill out in the woods last year, and we're vertically integrated to the point where we're producing all of our own boards. Our community lacks wood drying capacity, so we went as far as creating a solar powered kiln. We're working with our local foresters to gather local resources, and then we started in our first little manufacturing facility. And then what you're seeing here is actually the creation of the structure that satisfied our Wood Innovation Grant. So this is a 16 by 24 foot outdoor kitchen made out of Ponderosa Pine CLT and Ponderosa Pine timber frame elements. It all came within about 40 miles of this structure. And it just, it was our opportunity to demonstrate how mass timber can be utilized at a smaller scale in smaller communities.
So let me get this straight. One, you have the resources to actually go out and mill on a property. You have a solar powered kiln that you can use anywhere you're at.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So, I mean, it really is self-sustainable and vertically integrated for a rural community. I mean, you have this set up to where you could duplicate this across any rural community across the country as long as there was supply for, material.
That's our hope. Yeah. Our vision behind Timber Age is to use kind of Durango as a learning laboratory, that our main manufacturing facility might always be here in Durango, but our hope is to sort of solve as many problems, come up with as many ideas as we can here. But we kept our manufacturing facility intentionally small. Mass timber at the large scale is a well-known thing across the United States now, and folks in the Pacific Northwest and in the Southeast, they're doing amazing things and building incredible large structures. But we saw this opportunity, which was, how do we take that technology and deliver it to rural communities? So yes, our manufacturing facility is in a 1,000 square foot steel shop. We have 2 portable sawmills. We built a solar powered wood drying kiln and are in the process of making a couple of more. And it's our intent to take that model and replicate it in multiple communities, where they're confronted with a high cost of housing, maybe a lack of skilled labor, housing shortages, and they just happen to have an abundant natural resource. Those things come together for, I think, a really successful solution.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you say, right? We had up on the screen pop-up CLT, and this is something that's becoming a common word for, offsite manufacturing in general, whether it's modular, panelization. How do you have these factories where you can be portable in the communities, in the area, in the development, whatever it is, to do this? And there's very few people that have done it so far, right? There's a couple of them out there. So, but I think what you're doing for the rural community, it's a step further, because you're not plugging and playing everywhere. I mean, you're going to mill your own lumber, you're going to dry kiln your own lumber, and then you're going to build the walls and panels. And I would imagine along with this, you're going to be employing people, and that's a whole nother thing, adding more people to the labor force.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. We're very focused on community job growth, and we're lucky to live in an area with 4 seasons. And you talk to any framing crew in and around Southern Colorado, and winter around here is not all that easy sometimes. And so Kyle, with his background in manufacturing, we were like, well, why can't we move some of this manufacturing indoors? Why can't we start to take some of the elements out of the equation and grow good quality, high paying jobs that, folks can have here, and build some of these, products right here in a shop?
Yeah, no, really. I mean, this is great. We're traveling across the country as we speak right now in our motorhome, and we're going to be in all kinds of smaller rural communities as we travel. And this is going to be part of our conversation. I think it's wonderful to be able to have, something like this in our toolbox to say, well, hey, there is a solution out there. There is a way to bring housing to your community, because you're absolutely right. Not all the communities are set up for milling and for building locally. And when you have to transport and ship everything across the country, it gets just too expensive.
Yeah, agreed. And, we took that form factor, like CLT at its more traditional scale, panels that might be 10 and 12 feet tall and 20 or 40 or 60 feet long, and they're being used in really beautiful, highly efficient, multi-story structures. When we first started talking with communities around us, and we said, well, what if we bring in a panel from one of the other manufacturers, and, here are the dimensions of it, and it would require, a semi-truck trailer and a larger crane. And they just went, man, that's a little too big for us right now. And that's kind of a high hurdle. And we started shrinking the form factor and shrinking the concept. And we went back to some things that have been done within the CLT manufacturing world, back to the use of vacuum presses and smaller panel sizes, and sort of came to this panel size that's a little more familiar with a lot of traditional builders, of not strictly a 4 foot by 8 foot panel, but, in the 5 foot by 10 foot realm. And that lowered that barrier to entry. And all of a sudden, innovative builders, architects, engineers, designers around us went, oh, we've been reading about this mass timber revolution, and now you guys have created something that looks familiar, and it's of a familiar size, and you can deliver it on a truck, and you can lift it with a smaller crane. And so that's where the egg kind of hatched, I think.
Yeah, sure. Well, listen, I think we're going to, I want to talk about the sizes here in just a few moments. Like, what is it exactly that you do build? What are the sizes? You're doing wall panels, you're doing roof, you're doing structural CLT as well, all out of Ponderosa Pine. And I think it'd also be good to talk about the trials and tribulations that you had. Was it all roses since you started, or, were there things you learned about using a Ponderosa Pine versus, some other lumbers that other CLT manufacturers are using?
Yeah, no, the trials and tribulations are absolutely where it's at. Like, if you're not failing, you're not learning. That's right. And so we fail regularly, and we love every one of them. So yeah, Pondo is a fascinating tree species. It is knottier. It does move much more in the drying process. I think it's one of the reasons that it is difficult to use as a dimensional material. And we learned, some of our first boards that came out of green logs, we turned things into hockey sticks, and went, okay, so in our Southwest climate, sometimes we actually need to slow the drying process down, or be careful in the way that we are drying material, or be very careful in the way that we're sawing, so that we can get the greatest yields out of the trees. So there were drying mishaps. There were gluing mishaps early on, really high-tech CLT facilities with automated gluing systems. We don't have one. And so, we ran into some really creative solutions, paint rollers and J rollers, and, we've 3D printed different glue extrusion prototypes to be able to glue at kind of our manufacturing scale. And, we saw early vacuum press problems. How do we had no idea that with a water activated polyurethane glue that our first vacuum bags being made out of polyurethane, the glue really wanted to stick to the bags and then really wanted to stick to the zippers. And then all of a sudden we've destroyed our first couple of vacuum presses.
Just like that. I know it. Well, you know what? My grandfather always said, hey, if you want to be an entrepreneur, be prepared to bleed.
Yes.
Right?
Be prepared to bleed, be prepared to fail, be prepared to throw the first few ideas in the trash, but just keep going.
Absolutely. Let's say hi to a few people real quick, and then we're going to jump into some more videos. We're going to show some of the field process, some of the sawmill process. But right now, let's say hi. We got George Ryman. Hey, what's happening, George? Good morning from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Good morning, George. We have Edie Dillman. Hey, Timber Age buddies. Go, Andrew. So you got a little bit of an audience out here. We got Kyle Hansen saying, go, Andrew. There's somebody you probably don't run across all the time. You got the immediate past chairman, the top dog of the National Association of Home Builders, checking in on my way to the DCA airport, heading back after NAHB board meetings, coming to us from Twitch. I love it.
That's outstanding.
Greg's my Twitch guy, man. And we've been getting more people from Twitch too, Greg. And we go to Twitch, Andrew, because this is where the young people are. This is where they do the virtual gaming and all that. And we need more smart people like that in our industry. So Greg, have a safe trip. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. And we got Andrew Seeley, another great topic, business focus and conversation. Well done all. Love it. Love it. Look, people are tuning in, man. Will Everett, what's happening, Will? Great opportunity for Durango and any small community that wants sustainability. This is what's super cool. Oh, we got one more popped in. We got Joel Hutchins. Hello, all. Love the mass timber discussion. What is happening, Mr. Joel Hutchins? Good to see you again, man. I hope all is well. All right, let's get into it, Andrew. So why don't we jump into the timber mill process, and then we'll jump into, after that, let's talk about the sizes. Let's talk about the distances you serve and all of those things. But first, let's show this next video.
Excellent.
Is this the right one?
Yeah, let's use that one. So this was just me walking out of the shop yesterday. You can see some rough sawn boards there in production, and I'm going to kind of swing around here, and that's actually the kiln, and we're getting ready to install some photovoltaic panels on there. Let me see, did I get yeah, this is just sawmill setup. We can use fairly small diameter material. I'll stop it there since we didn't get just the first part of that. But those saw logs there, we found that we can actually use material down to about a 7-inch diameter log on the top, which is fairly small, especially compared to some dimensional mills. And what it's meant is that for a community that's doing a lot of fire mitigation work, and for a tree species that just grows a little slower, or maybe we're dealing with secondary growth, it allows us to use that material that's coming out, from communities that are trying to reduce their wildfire potential. Durango had a near brush with a very large wildfire just 2 years ago. And so it's right in our community's mind, which is how do we prepare our community more for the next fire and the fire after that. And so luckily with a great old wood miser sawmill and a, horizontal bandsaw mill and a little creativity and careful sawing, we can actually use some fairly small material.
I love it. I mean, this is the entrepreneurial way. I mean, 100%. I don't know. The video stopped. I don't know if it's playing on your end.
I stopped it there just because we had gone through that part there, Dave. That was just a quick little one. Yeah, that kiln was funny. That's the first one we built, and we intend to build a couple of more. And Kyle and I both were immediately like, man, the next one is made out of CLT. We're building the whole next one as CLT.
All right, you gotta eat your own pudding, right?
Yes, and we used an Oregon State design that they had come up with a recirculating, solar kiln. And Kyle is a programmable logic controller super guru, and so that kiln actually weighs the wood, can tell us when it's reached its sort of optimal dry weight. It's got variable speed fans. So we took a pretty simple design and added a few bells and whistles to it.
Sure. I love it. We're going to get into design as well. That'll be another topic that we talk about. But let's talk about the size of your structural beams that you're making, and also the panel size. What are you guys putting out the door right now? And also give us the radius of how far of a community you serve.
Sure. We try and work within kind of 100-mile working circle. It helps with supply chain, with trucking, with the cost of moving material. And we found that we can be more cost competitive in an environment that's still predominantly relying on stick-built material if we keep that working circle small. To meet the needs of a smaller community with smaller building needs, we did shrink that form factor. We can build a panel up to 5 feet by 10 feet. It's a 3-inch thick 3-lam panel. And it's made in a vacuum press with a little bit of mechanical press on the edge. So we kind of combined the traditional vacuum press with a mechanical press. We've produced just uninsulated CLT panels of various sizes and shapes with different apertures for doors, windows, and electrical, and are past the point of prototyping an insulated wall design now, where we're actually taking the CLT and creating either an insulated wall or an insulated roof in our facility as well, with the hopes that we kind of meet some of the benefits of a SIP type system, where if we can build very rapidly and take a fully insulated wall panel and bring that directly to the job site and speed up the production there at the job site, that would be really beneficial.
What would be the thickness of, doing a CLT wall panel with SIPs in between? What are we looking at as far as thickness and R value for something like that?
Yeah, so if you start with a 3-inch thick CLT panel and then a vapor barrier, and say we went for a tight packed cellulose wall system for a family or a builder that wanted a foam-free wall, and then out to exterior cladding and strapping from there, our wall system actually utilizes a vertically run TJI to create the void for a tight packed cellulose insulation system. But it's CLT, vapor barrier, insulation, WRB, and then strapping for exterior cladding. That goes to about 13.5 inches. And it produces an R48, R49 wall. Oh, I think you're on the mute there, Dave.
Are you guys thinking of MEPs in the future at all? Like adding any MEPs to your wall system?
Yes, we have. And, we think with electrical has been the easier one to solve for sure. Even within the electrical code, allowing for some quick connects and kind of panel to panel, pre-routing the electrical connector or electrical apertures, pre-installing those in the shop and pre-installing some of the rough electrical, again, helps to that speed to occupancy and speed in construction. Some of our early prototype structures and stuff, if it is a stem wall type foundation, even with the CLT floor, knowing that it's probably going to be best to run plumbing up from a conditioned crawl space. But yeah, we're definitely in the midst of solving the MEP problem right now.
Love it, love it. So what are we looking at size wise here for your structural CLT beams?
No beams at this point, just CLT
Okay.
panels, and upwards of 5 feet by 10 feet. We
Okay.
use both like in the CLT handbook, folks will be familiar with surface splines and then center splines. And so we're doing both surface splining and center splining, so that we can connect panel to panel, and are to the point now of beginning to experiment with connecting a couple of panels together in the shop. So say we create something that's 10 feet by 10 feet, and that's still readily liftable. We're pre-installing lifting hardware and things on our panels so that when they get to the job site, the mobility is a little easier. But we've stuck to that sort of smaller form factor because it was something that communities are more familiar with.
Sure. Love it. All right, everybody, listen, if you're just joining us, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And we have Andy Hawk from Timber Age Systems, Durango, Colorado, doing amazing things for the rural community. So, Andy, here's what I'm hearing. One is you don't have to be a 500,000 square foot factory and highly automated to make a difference, right? This is the big thing, because in a rural community, with the lack of labor, the lack of skilled labor is more the words we should be using, and the ability to have locally sourced material keeps the cost down. You're designing things that can be lifted and moved, that aren't so heavy that it requires, $3,000 a day crane, dollar a day cranes to make that happen. And you're using local resources, which is making it super, super sustainable as well. And the whole concept is growing not only from panels, but also insulated panels, right? So I absolutely love this. Let's go to the next video. Let's show the inside of the plant. And then when we're done talking about that, I want to talk about the design process. Let's say I want Timber Age Systems to build me something. What are we going to do? What technology are we using today? And what technology are you looking to use in the future?
That'd be great.
All right, here we go. Here's the video.
Yeah, let me start that over. So this is what it looks like to produce CLT in 1,000 square feet. Boards come in through a chop saw station. So we got some raw material, a couple finished panels there, a Crendel cellulose insulation machine, Wood-Miser's four-sided molder planer MP360. Out from there onto an outfeed table and swinging around onto the press table. Vacuum press table there with mechanical edge pressure. Out onto there, and the guys are going to make fun of you here because they were having lunch and they were like, don't be filming where we're having lunch. And then into kind of a panel finishing station here for sizing, sanding, and splining, and then getting panels ready to package and head out the door. But that is just how tight it is to produce, smaller scale CLT in 1,000 square feet.
Right. So what was that? Four guys and a dog? That's what it takes to produce it?
4 guys and a dog. Yeah, it's typically 1 or 2 people out on the raw material side producing roughs on boards, and 2, sometimes 3 people inside working on panel, on board planing, primer application, glue application, pressing, and then panel finishing. Right. But yeah, it's a crew that is incredibly dedicated. They're all local guys with really brilliant backgrounds. It's one of the upsides to the COVID pandemic. I mean, these guys were thinking, man, this is a time to make a change. And they trusted us and are part of the Timber Age family and are on the journey with us. But yes, right now it's 2 co-founders and 4 unbelievably dedicated employees.
Love it. Love it. Perfect. So let's get into how we design. How do we design? How do we come up with what we are building? And walk me through the process on how that actually transfers out into the factory or into the shop out there.
We learned early on that one of the key components to success is working with architects from the get-go. And anybody that's worked with mass timber or alternative building systems, be it SIP or something else, getting those concepts put forth, whether it's through integrated project delivery or another sort of philosophy, but working with your designer really early in the process to avoid some pitfalls and rework. So we've partnered with an architect here locally named Matt Clark. Matt has developed Revit families within Revit. We design heavily within Fusion 360, but sitting down with a family or a business that would like to have a Timber Age built structure, sitting down with them early on in the design process so that the proper kind of gridding and things can be done to be able to utilize the material that we can fabricate is really important. And, we're still solving endless, problems and opportunities. And how do we rethink the way these structures are going to be utilized if we're going to use mass timber elements in a smaller structure? But, my advice and guidance is, to start as early as possible in, bringing in an architect, working with somebody comfortable with 3-dimensional design, so that by the time you get to panel manufacturing, you've really reduced the potential for waste, you've reduced the potential for rework, and that's where you start to get closer to being very cost competitive in a mass timber structure at a small scale compared to a traditionally stick framed home.
Yeah, I understand that. So all right, so the customer sits down with you, you come up with the design that works, so you work with the architect on the design. You're just the wall panel side. How does it work once you have built it in the manufacturing facility and get it out the door? Do you have somebody on site? Do you have your own crews? How does that come together?
Yeah, no, excellent question. I love it. That first structure that we built, that was the outdoor kitchen that popped up there on that first video, we worked with a local builder, Lighthouse Construction, and their guys had never seen CLT before. And they had they were like, what have you given us? What are these giant wood Lego things? And, it's about education as much as anything. So by the time a building has gone through the design phase and the panels are manufactured and it's time to be delivered to site, having a handful of contractors, carpenters, finished carpenters that are really familiar with your product. And so we sort of envision this educational opportunity to take guys that have been building the same way for the past few decades and giving them the opportunity to learn how to use a different material. We don't want to serve as the general contractor. We want to train those that want to build with this material, and give them an opportunity to experiment with it. And just handing our material to a couple of very professional high-end carpenters for the first time, they immediately came up with a bunch of ways to fix it. So yeah, it's really about that partnership between the panel manufacturer and the end user.
Yeah, for sure. But again, I mean, you're putting more and more people into the workforce, that are learning better systems, learning more sustainable systems. It is what it's all about. Now you guys have, Durango, the Durango Learning Lab.
Yes.
This might be a good segue to just touch on that. And then I'm going to come back to the technology side of this. But what is the Durango Learning Lab?
Well, we figured we've got to just jump in and do this for the first time. And so we see Durango and our manufacturing facility here being the place of constant innovation, of constant experimentation. That, once we have, solve the first handful of problems, that we move on to the next idea and the next idea around this concept of smaller form mass timber for rural communities. And not simply just stopping with, we produced a few good CLT panels, but being able to take learning from our manufacturing home here in Durango and replicate that out in other communities, whether it be in northern Arizona or somewhere else through Colorado or even Utah or up into parts of Montana and Wyoming. But seeing Durango as the opportunity to constantly try something different. Well, what if we change the way glue is applied here? What if we change the way that boards are manufactured in this way? And so that innovation and that free thinking never stops.
Yeah, for sure. And, it doesn't have to be in a white coat lab somewhere, doing all of these things. I mean, this is really where trial and error, begins and happens in the different climate zones, right? The Ponderosa Pine and the, water-based, stuff that you're using may not work in other climate zones, or am I wrong on that?
No, I think that's true. I mean, Ponderosa is it's a relatively slow growing arid species. Other CLT manufacturers throughout the country, whether they're using southern yellow pine in the southeast or Douglas fir and hemlock or a spruce or a larch in the northwest, or up into Canada, those are the tree species that they have access to and are going to be fit for their community. And then there's going to be this creativity that occurs kind of everywhere in between. And so one solution isn't always going to fit everywhere. And, we are incredibly lucky to partner with Fort Lewis College, which is the great college right here in Durango. They've got a growing engineering program here. And just last night, I dropped off a 5-foot by 10-foot panel for the engineering students at Fort Lewis in their structural engineering class. And they have begun acoustic, destructive and non-destructive testing of our panels. And it's our hope to continue that partnership with Fort Lewis and grow kind of a wood innovations educational hub here. And, these are kids that many of them come from Native American and tribal communities, and to give them access to some of this technology and kind of bring them in to that fold and continue our work with Fort Lewis and their engineering department so that we can begin to test our own material right here as we move forward with additional national certifications and testing.
I think it's great that the universities are getting involved in this. On our roadshow that we're here at Lake Nona, we're working with the NAHB student chapter.
Oh, wow.
We're traveling the country, and we'll be live streaming into the classrooms of, several major universities across the country to bring the education of what you're doing, what they're doing here at Lake Nona and other places across the country. And I think the educational, side of this with the student bodies is going to play a big role. Like you said, what student doesn't want to try to beat the crap out of something with acoustics or physically, right?
Yes.
But it's going to play a big role in moving our industry forward. And it's also going to play a big role in workforce development, because I think today's youth, and they're much more into environmentally friendly products, sustainable products. They're not interested in swinging hammers in the cold, -20 Colorado weather any longer, right?
Yep.
These are all things that I think really play a role in getting more people into our industry. What are you seeing out there in Durango and elsewhere where you're having conversations with the workforce and bringing them into our community?
It starts all the way at the middle school. I think I think that the national trend behind understanding the benefit of highly skilled tradespeople. And so we've got a career educational program that starts in Durango, exposing kids to trades at the middle school, high school, and then luckily up even at our local college there at Fort Lewis. But we've gone and met with the high school programs, the trades programs in the high schools that are building tiny homes and things of that nature. And they're starting there to grow that technical workforce, trades workforce, because these are kids that are going to be unbelievably savvy. They're going to have computer skills. They're going to be gamers potentially, where they are going to be super comfortable, whether they're running a crane or the joysticks in a mini excavator, but giving them an opportunity to also apply that to what is a fairly high-tech material. And sort of growing that resource from the ground up in these communities results in these people that, these are good jobs and hopefully sustaining long-term jobs for communities, where if these are kids that want to stay in their community or they go away to college and they want to come back, then they've got an opportunity to do it. And part of that's going to be building these smaller, more modular, more mobile manufacturing facilities throughout multiple communities.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's great that you're getting the local high school already involved in a lot of this. So can you believe it's already 46 minutes, Andy? What haven't we covered yet? I got so many more questions on this, because I think this is a really amazing opportunity for rural communities, and to share this knowledge, I think is very empowering to other people that are out there to learn about what you're doing, how you're doing it, any of those things. How are people finding you? So how does a consumer know that they want Timber Age? One of the things we're fighting in our industry is a language issue, right? What do we call ourselves? Because the normal consumer is not going to say, hey, I want a CLT structure. I don't want a Timber Age structure. They just don't know it yet as this is growing. What is your thoughts on our industry? And what do you think we should be calling ourselves? Like, how do people find you?
Yeah, although it's awesome. We're so much like this little adolescent company right now. And I think people are coming to us organically. We had a gentleman that lives up in the far northern part of Colorado just find us via Instagram. And so it was completely organic. And he's a timber framer. And he said, I'm working on this timber frame structure, and I think that there might be a role for some CLT in the floor of it. Can you guys do this kind of thing? So as a young company that's just getting on its feet, there's no marketing department. There's no great budget for that. And so the use of word of mouth, of social media, of just working with county planners, city staff, our local home builders association right here in Durango, to just begin that educational process has been key to us sort of spreading the word. The community outreach events we did through our Wood Innovation Grant helped. We went through a boot camp last year through the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. They've got a great kind of growth lab for companies that are working on waste reduction and kind of upcycle or repurposing. And so that gave us access to some things. So I think it is, for us at this point, pretty organic. And then, to your question, what do we call ourselves? We've struggled. Are we a wood products manufacturer? Are we a wood products innovator? Are we a rural manufacturer? And it's fun because in the end, what we're trying to do is, to elevate communities through innovative materials and methods that transform the way we design and build. And it's about that built space, which is, what do you want the built environment to be? And what do we want the built environment of our future to look like? And I think that's, that's where we're grounded.
Yeah, no, for sure. We definitely are. And it's something we're struggling with as an industry. And I think we'll kind of get through it. I've been asking everybody the same questions. Let's go to some comments here real quick. I see this is lighting up. Hey, listen, well, you impressed Greg Ugaldi. There you go. Excellent show today. How cool is that? Greg, you got to check out what these guys are doing. This is really, really good stuff for the rural community. So love it. Thanks for tuning in, Mr. Ugaldi. George Ryman, the innovation of CLT involves many other categories as well. I was just highlighting the need for a specialized CLT sound abatement strategy to a flooring provider yesterday. Additionally, I had a recent conversation with a fire sprinkler company who have not heard of CLT in the portfolio yet, but I advise them to prepare. I love it. I love it. So this is it, right? This is where we're struggling as an industry in offsite, whether it's CLT, panelization, modular, is defining who we are.
Yeah.
So the consumer, the builder, the developer, they know what they're looking for. They can find it. They can find you. They can find me. So we're gonna keep working through all of that moving forward here. So, all right, who else we have in here? Tom Reddy. What's happening, Tom? Awesome. Education will drive fresh ideas and keep the younger workers enthused.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, and then you got Jennifer in here promoting. We are live on location with NAHB student chapters tomorrow as we host Craig Collins and Robert Adams at 9 Pacific, 12 noon. So listen, everybody, tomorrow is not 1 p.m. Maybe I said it wrong earlier. 12 noon. I lose track of time sometimes. Yeah,
it's easy.
It's gonna be a great show. And again, it's all about educating everybody. And speaking of education, you're in Colorado. If you don't know Eric Holt at the University at Denver, you should.
Okay.
I can make an introduction for you there. I think he'd be real interested in having his students learning about what you guys are working on as well. So as we keep rolling through this, and Eric's part of our student chapter, so he'll be tuned in tomorrow.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And we've had the opportunity through Colorado State Forest Service and their connection with Colorado State University to really get involved in that broader conversation. I mean, they're building incredible mass timber buildings in Denver, at the moment. Denver University just built one of their innovation centers out of CLT. I believe most of that material may have come from Quebec. But, those kinds of partnerships with your local universities and schools are absolutely key to the change that likely needs to occur in the United States around the built environment. The gentleman that made the comment about fires and sprinklers, that is maybe top 3 questions we get, which is, wait a minute, you guys want to build these all wood structures in an area that is totally prone to wildfire. How can that be? And so we actually, in one of our community events, had some folks come down that had done a lot of fire studies, both around mass timber and fire retardant wood products, and talk about the role of some of these newer technologies in communities that might experience wildfire, because it's something that our communities are going to encounter. And, mass timber has been shown in a number of studies to stand up really well.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's been proven over and over again in a lot of studies. I mean, they're even building, 16 stories plus in mass timber in Europe, and what have you. And, I always equate it, it's funny. I was just trout fishing this weekend, right? We have a big bonfire.
Awesome.
You throw the little piece of lumber on like a 2x4, it burns right through. You throw the log on,
Yes.
it's there the next morning, right? It's kind of the same example, right? And a lot of people will char the wood and things like that. But I think mass timber is coming back. I think it's here to stay. A lot of the big corporations are now using it, And you made a comment about Canada. Canada has been doing CLT for a long time, and it's huge. We are now just starting to see the growth, people like yourself and others here in the United States that are producing CLT on a larger scale. So it's definitely here to stay. It's definitely more sustainable, and I think I think you have a bright future in front of you, I guess is the best way to say that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, your invitation to come on the show today and talk about what we're up to has just been incredibly gracious, and we deeply appreciate it, Dave, you and your entire team. I mean, it's a fun, crazy little journey that we're on as a young company. I mean, anybody that's gone out and left a career and said, no, I see this problem out on the horizon. I want to go see if we can conquer this problem. And, we talked to a lot of folks in Durango before Kyle and I jumped off and said, let's incorporate this thing called timber age. And they were like, you might be a little bit nuts. And I said, well, sometimes good things come from being a little bit nuts.
So we're just real quick before we end here, timber age, how'd the name come about?
Oh man, I wish Kyle was here to answer that question. I think we tried a number of different things on. It's funny. There's actually another great Durango company here. It's a water blasting tool company called Stone Age. Yeah. And so we don't know if it's just in the Durango thing where now we have Stone Age and now we have Timber Age and who knows what's next. But we realized that this sort of return to the love of wood, whether you get into biophilia and kind of the health benefits associated with wood structures. But there is this thinking now in the built environment, which is what is the place of wood and where does this material come from and what does it do to us as humans to live in these timber and wood structures? And I can remember sitting around a cup of coffee with Kyle saying, man, it kind of feels like we're entering this next timber age. And there it came.
There it is. I love it. I think you should just roll with that. That's it. That's the new. We're rolling with the timber age. I love it. Yeah. It is the timber age. Well, listen, Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show today. Everybody, if you are not following Andy Hock and his team, please follow them at Timber Age Systems. Look them up on YouTube. They need to grow their YouTube channel. We had a conversation about that.
Yes.
Definitely follow them on the other social channels. It sounds like you're big on Instagram, so I love it. We're going to be heading to Colorado here probably over the next few weeks, so we're going to look you up and come visit you as well. And for everybody else out there, I hope you enjoyed today's show. My name is Dave Cooper. We are in Lake Nona at a Tavistock development. You are going to see some of the coolest things you have ever seen when it comes from technology. So join us tomorrow at 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So I got it right that time, Andy. So yes, you did. We will be live, and you might see me live tonight. I may do a pop-up live. Since we're talking about pop-up, I might go pop-up live as I'm out enjoying this community because it is something amazing. So with that said, everybody have a wonderful evening. Andy, don't go anywhere. I'll come right back to you after the outro. And everybody else, thank you so much. And thanks again to Howick and Forward Solutions Group for being our sponsors today. Bye now.
Thank you all.